Hey, what's up? It's Kit. Time for another video. It has been a month since my last upload, and a lot has happened in my life. You guys wouldn't believe it. Now, if you're following closely, you know what I'm talking about, but there's some other stuff that's been happening as well. Anyway, so today we're rigging some jigs. All right. These are some of my favorites before I started working for the other companies, and believe it or not, they are still some of the best that you can buy in the market. Now, what I'm talking about, of course, is the Jigpara Micro. Okay, so two of the sizes that works for me. And we also have a jig here that I found online that I found interesting. It is a slow jig, and man, they were cheap, so I bought some. Okay, now I'm gonna be modifying some of these, and I'm gonna show you how I actually go about it. For some, it's kind of boring. For some, it's not. Anyway, so yeah, this is some of those things that you could actually use or do to make things better. Now, first, let me explain this jig. This jig is meant to be cast and then reeled in slowly until you get the right speed and you get the fish to bite. Obviously, you're already familiar with this. You could just cast it, jig it up and down, or reel it in slowly. It works like that. This, on the other hand, is a slow jig, and you could do long fall, short hopping retrieves, and it works best if it's near the bottom. This is kind of like an all-arounder. Now, this particular thing here is meant to be cast, drop down to the bottom, reeled in slowly. And I'll tell you, I've tried it, it works. Okay. Now, there's a bigger version of this called the Surf. Okay, so it's Jigpara Surf, and it works great. Also used it. And for the bigger stuff, it's great. Now, my problem is I've tried that other one and it worked great, but it has a spinner blade and this one doesn't. Okay, so I'm gonna put a spinner blade just like that. Okay, and I'm also gonna try a different configuration. Now, I couldn't find swivels that are smaller than this, and I couldn't find ball bearing swivels, so I'm just using crane swivels, and we'll see if it works. Now, my biggest thing here is that it adds a bit of length, okay? Not too much of a fan of that, and I'll see exactly how this swims because this isn't ball bearing, so that's gonna, although it is going to spin, it's probably gonna cause a bit of drag, and is probably the reason why they didn't put it on these. But we'll see, okay? We'll see. There are other swivel configurations that will make it spin better, such as this one, but the biggest problem, of course, is that it will add length. Now, I have two types of spinner blades, which is the Colorado and the willow leaf. I'm gonna be attaching the willow leaf in a different manner because I'm just gonna be using it for flash. And also, what I've discovered is that if I put the willow leaf on, like what I'm about to show you, it will give it flash, it won't spin, it'll give it flash, and it's not gonna add a lot of length, which is what honestly I'm trying to avoid here, putting more length on something like this, because the bait fish in the place that I fish a lot in are actually this size. Okay, now you have to bear with me, guys. I'm not wearing my glasses, and with these micro jigs and micro components, it's kind of difficult to see even with bright lights like what I'm using now. All right, so we have that. So for the willow leaf, what I'm gonna try, because again, this is an experiment and I don't really know exactly if it's gonna affect the action, or most likely what's gonna happen is that there is going to be an effect on the action, but what we will try to do is to minimize that so the jig still moves. Now, you have to be careful when you're putting these on that you're putting it right side up. Okay, so easiest way is to actually just put the spinner blade, because we want to maximize flash. Okay, so what's gonna happen with this spinner blade is that it's going to be sideways like that. It's not gonna be flat. And this is one of those things that I said would affect, because this will try to spin, but it won't because there's no swivel there. So it's just gonna keep on flashing. If you want it to be flat like that, you're gonna have to add another split ring, which I don't like because it's gonna add a bit more length. So stick with this and see what happens. I like doing these experiments because it's it's a learning process, and you know, when you actually get it right, helps you catch more fish and gives you something different, especially if there are people that are casting the same thing. So if you can see here, with this blade, it's adding only a small bit to the length as opposed to this one, which adds a lot of length. So these two we will try. Now, why am I not adding this instead of the willow leaf? The problem with this is that it's wide, so as you can see, it's covering the hooks like that, whereas with the willow leaf, it doesn't do that because it's a thin blade, and I want the hookup ratio to be as high as possible. So we'll see. Now also, if you put something there, you'll see that it kind of gets tangled, but hopefully with the willow leaf, it's not gonna get tangled as much. Of course, you can cut this and make it even shorter, and we'll try that soon, but I'll try with these first and see how it goes. Okay, now 15-gram jigs such as these are great, and here in Dubai you can see that you can get them with red eyes, and this is the only place you can get them with red eyes. They're great. The hooks have been upgraded on these than the normal Jigpara lineup you could find all over the world. One of the very first things that we noticed about the Jigparas when we first imported them was that the hooks weren't strong enough. So the owner of Barracuda spoke to Major Craft to upgrade the hooks, and they listened. So the difference between the 10 and the 15, as you can see, actually just a tiny bit, but you get a bit more distance with the 15. Again, this is probably 15 and 20 is probably, depending on the configuration or the shape of the jig, 15 and 20 would be the best you could use for shore fishing here in the UAE. And I'm pretty sure that you take these and you take it to the rest of the world, they will actually catch. Now, the advantage of the 15, of course, is that it has a bit more bite as far as hooks are concerned, and the upgrade size of the hook also comes with the upgrade of strength. Now, what I don't like about these are the hooks up front. Okay, they're strong and they last relatively long. Okay, they are not bad, but they could be better. Okay, now I found these. Okay, these are owners, and the hooks on these are actually really strong, even if they are thin. So there are doubles and singles. Okay, we just size it down. So this is size 4. I'll put it here, and then size 2s would be for the bigger ones. I believe these are size 2s right here, and then this is I'm gonna put there. Now look at this. Okay, and this is the whole reason why we have this chopping board. As you could see, this is UV reactive, and this is the reason why I'm putting this on, because having something that's UV reactive here will give the fish a hot spot to home into. I mean, even just with the normal lights, you can see how loud that looks compared to this one, which is attractive with the flash and everything, but especially with shallow water or dirty water, UV shows up more than flash. So it's a definite advantage. Okay, so I'm gonna be upgrading to the owners. Another thing about the owners is that we know that they're strong. They are very strong. Okay, and they'll hook a big fish and they will stay in there. That's something that has been proven. Okay, now another thing about this is that if you notice with these jigs, if you tie on the split ring, they'll be on the side. If you tie on the solid ring, they'll be there, but they'll stick out. Okay, so I just leave it like that and then put another split ring, or if you're using a clip, put the clip in front here instead of putting it on the split ring. Now, the clip will give you a much more solid connection as well. Okay, so with the clip, you could put a swivel, you could put a solid ring if you want to, or you could just put a split ring and then tie your line there. Now, at this level, which is the very light stuff, you actually don't need too much hardware. So instead of a clip like this, because for me, stealth is always an issue, what I do is just put a loop knot there. And I know that there are others that vouch for clips and all that, but for me, my hookup ratio has been quite high just with that alone. The third jig we're going to be working on is this Chinese one that I found online, and it's nice and everything. One right here that I was about to rig. So this owner flash assist have a twin hook version, as you can see here. And while I was shopping, I saw that this was, the size was perfect for this. So what we're gonna do is, I'm gonna be using that. Okay. Okay. Now, I'm not gonna be putting a hook at the back. This is gonna stay as is. Okay. So as you can see there, put this on. The length is perfect for the jig, and it gives it a bit of a color break there. As you can see, it's all silver, and then the green and the pink goes well. Okay, so we're doing that, and then at the back, what I'm gonna do is actually put a spinner blade. Now I know that length is a kind of a concern here, but remember that this is a slow jig and it's not gonna be jerked around. What I will do is either hop it on the bottom, or reel it up to the surface, or jerk it up to the surface, and then it'll fall. And while it's falling and wobbling, the blade, which doesn't, this blade, the willow leaf, which doesn't really affect a lot of the action of the jig, will be spinning and giving it more flash. So as you can see, this is already a silver jig and it's moving, and with this it'll flash a bit more. So we have our flash, we have our UV. Should be interesting. Now tomorrow I'm gonna be using these on the kayak, and I'll only take 2 rods with me and 3 types of lures. So we have one for slow, one for just casting and jigging, and then we'll have one that we will use to just cast and retrieve. So first thing, I think this on here. So with the swivel, like so. Should use the same. Okay. And we're gonna put in our willow leaf spinner blade. So the main aim for me here, while I'm doing this, is that this jig is not going to be cast and retrieved. Okay. The thing here is that I'm gonna be fishing it pretty much while it's falling. And when it's falling, okay, this spinner blade will give it a bit of resistance so that it will have its wobble on the way down, but it also slows the rate of descent down by just a tad. Now, when I'm using this, I'm gonna be using a clip, smaller than this, of course, and then I'll put it on like that. That way, it gives me a solid connection and gives it a lot of freedom. So especially on a kayak, when you're fishing something vertically, this would work really well. And while you're drifting, you could just keep it on the bottom and hop it, and it'll wobble and it will flash, and that's something that attracts the fish. So just with these tiny modifications, you've actually made the stock micro jig better. And especially for these two that we worked on earlier, it'll be something for me to see if it gives it better action, or I take them off and they'll be back to the normal manufacturer spec. Either way, on slow days, especially on slow days, it is something that could save your fishing trip from actually not catching and catching. So these little modifications are things that would help you just carry things over. Okay, so yeah, again, sorry for the little break there, but something I had to do. And again, thanks so much for watching, and if you have questions or comments, please just drop a comment below. I try to answer all of them as much as possible. Might be some delays, but trust me, I answer all the comments and I read all the comments. So again, guys, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.